Okay, today we're going to solve polynomial inequalities. So the first thing we're going to do is write the polynomial inequality in standard form. And that means all of the stuff is on one side and you have a 0 on the other side. So you have to make it so everything goes on one side and the 0 is on the other side. Next we're going to find all the zeros. So in this case the 0 would be 3, 1, and -4. Then we're going to draw a number line, and we're just going to plot the zeros. So I would have -4, I would have 1, and I would have 3. After we do this, this example wants all of the zeros less than 0, which means the answer has to be negative. If it's less than 0, it has to be negative. If it's greater than 0, it has to be positive. So in this case, I want all my negative answers. Don't forget when you're doing this, if it had the equal to, these get closed circles, and if it doesn't have the equal to, these get open circles. Then we're going to choose a test number, and we're going to substitute that in, and we're going to find we're going to determine the sign in that interval. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. And lastly, we're going to find the part of the number line that satisfies whether it's less than or greater than. So this is how this works, guys. First of all, we're going to draw a number line. Next, we're going to put the zeros on the number line. So my first 0 is 0. My next 0 is 1. My next 0 is -3. So there's my zeros. The next thing I'm looking at is it's less than or equal to, so I'm going to get closed points when I do this. So you have to test each part of the number line and find out, do I get positive solutions or negative solutions? Because this time I want positive solutions, greater than. So I want positive solutions. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a number over here. And it doesn't matter whether you pick -4, -10, or -100. All I want is I want to know what's the sign of the answer in this part of the number line. So let's say I pick -4. If I put -4 in here, then I have a negative sign. If I put -4 in here, negative, and then I subtract another one, I still have a negative sign. And if I put -4 in here, -4 plus 3 would still give me a negative sign. So I'd get negative times negative would be positive, times a negative gives me a negative answer in this part of the number line. That's not a part of my solution because I want the positive answers. So I'm going to test a number in this portion of the number line now. So let's say I pick -1. So first of all, if I put -1 in here, I get negative. If I put -1 in here, I still get negative. And I put -1 in here, now it's positive. So a negative times a negative is a positive, times a positive gives me a positive answer, and that's what I want. I want my positive solutions. So this portion of the number line is part of the solution. So next, I'm going to test this region right here. And so between 0 and 1, I'm going to pick a fraction. But remember, it doesn't matter that it's a fraction. All we want is the signs. So if I put 1/2 in here, it's positive. If I put 1/2 in here, it's going to be negative. So I'm going to have a negative sign. If I put 1/2 in here, it's positive. So positive times a negative times a positive. This is a negative portion, and so that is not included in the solution. So the last one I'm going to test is over here. So if I test number 2, 2 is positive. If I put 2 in here, 2 minus 1, that's positive. And if I put 2 plus 3, that's also positive. This is positive. So this portion is also the solution. So I would write that -3 to 0 because it's interval notation. They're closed, so I get brackets. This also gets a bracket, 1 to infinity. So problem number 2. If I draw the number line and put the zeros on there, I get 3 and -2. So I have to test this portion, and this portion. This time, there's no line, so it's an open circle. And this time, I want greater than, so I want positive. So when I test, if I'm testing here and I test the number -3, so the first thing I have to write down is a negative because I have a negative. I'm going to write it down here because I can't reach. So negative. If I put -3 in here, I get another negative. And if I put -3 in there, I still get negative. But this time it's squared. So what's a negative squared? A positive. So negative times negative gives me positive and positive. So this interval is positive. So this interval gets included. Next, I have to test this interval right here. So that interval, if I pick 0, I have to start with a negative because that's right here. If I put 0 in here, that's negative. And if I put 0 in here, it's positive squared. So negative times negative is a positive times a positive. So this ends up positive. So this also gets included. But the number 2 and 3 do not get included. Or -2 and the -2 doesn't get included and neither does the 3. So those get brackets. So last I have to test this over here. So if I put a 4 in, I start with a negative. If I put 4 in, I get positive, and then I get positive squared. So positive, positive. So this is negative. So this does not get included. So this is how I'm going to write this. From here to here, but it's an open circle, so -2 doesn't get included. So negative infinity to -2, -2 to 3, and then not this portion over here. Okay, so example 3. Draw the number line. So I'm going to have -4, that's here. I'm going to have +1 and +2. So I have to test this, I have to test this, I have to test this, and I have to test this. And this time it's a line, and so it's a closed circle, and this time I want my negative answers. So when I test here, and I start, let's say with -5, so I write the negative down. If I put -5 in there, this is also negative. If I put -5 in here, it's negative cubed, and then -5 in here is negative squared. So negative times negative is a positive. This is a negative, and this is a positive. So I end up with negative. So this part gets included. Now I have to test this section right here. So if I use 0, I have to start with my negative. And if I put 0 in here, this is negative. If I put 0 in here, it's positive cubed. And if I put 0 in here, It's negative squared. So I get negative times a negative is a positive. This is positive, and this is positive. So this is a positive interval, so it is not part of the solution set. So now I'm going to try between 1 and 2. So if I test between 1 and 2, so I have to start with my negative sign. Next, if it's so it's 1.5. So if I put 1.5 in here, this gives me a negative sign. If I put 1.5 in here, this is positive. And if I put 1.5 in here, this is positive. So negative, negative, and these are positive, so this ends up to be a positive interval, and it is not included. So if I try 3, I have to start with my negative sign. If I put 3 in here, it's positive. If I put 3 in here, it's positive. And if I put 3 in here, it's still positive. So this ends up to be a negative solution, and it does get included. So when I write this, I'm going to write negative infinity to negative 4, and then 2 to infinity. Okay. Now the next one, you have to factor to start. So if we're going to factor this, I would get negative 4, negative 3, which is going to give me negative 4 and negative 1. Oh, this is plus. So I have negative. This factors. Can I factor x squared plus 1? I can't. So I get x squared plus 1. So can I get a 0 for this? If I have x squared, if I have x squared plus 1, and I set it equal to 0, and I subtract the 1, can I take the square root of a negative number? I can't, so this one you cannot do. Okay, start your homework.